Thousands of Georgians require dialysis to do what their kidneys cannot, to clean their bodies of toxins.
But some patients admit to the Fox 5 team they really don't need expensive taxpayer-funded ambulance rides to get to their dialysis appointments. Fox 5 team reporter Randy Travis says unnecessary free rides are exactly what the government is trying to stop.
That's right, Tom and Sinead. Yeah, these trips are supposed to be only for people who cannot get to the dialysis clinic any other way without putting their health in danger. Yet 3 times a week, an ambulance pulled up to the homes of Georgians who say they didn't really need it. And those patients say Medicare paid for the trip.
For months, we watched Caring Hands ambulances travel the streets of West Cobb, Douglas, and Paulding counties. They were not handling 911 calls or other emergencies. These ambulances always headed to the nearest dialysis clinic. And if the patient was on Medicare, that meant an average $500 taxpayer-funded payment to Caring Hands for every round trip. But how many really needed the ride?
The ambulance service that carries a patient who can walk or who is not eligible for a non-emergency ambulance knows exactly what they're doing and knows exactly how they get paid.
Now, this is a part of the investigation where you might expect us to show you video of patients walking to the ambulance. And we shot plenty of examples, but we worried about their lack of blame in this, especially when some patients told us they never asked for an ambulance in the first place. So let me demonstrate what we saw. A woman repeatedly walking the 7 steps up to her front door after her treatments. Another who walked more than 20 feet on her own to get to the stretcher waiting for her outside her house. And a man who walked out of his house and climbed right on the stretcher. In fact, 2 patients told me when they go to other doctors, they don't need stretchers or ambulances. They get family members to drive them. They say they only prefer Medicare-funded ambulances for dialysis simply because it's more convenient.
That ambulance trip is not covered by Medicare.
At least it shouldn't be.
Or it should not be covered by Medicare.
Rick Tibbetts spent 35 years in the business, starting as a paramedic, ultimately owning his own ambulance service in Troup County.
A lot of tax dollars get processed through these cubicles
Absolutely.
every day.
They sure do.
Now he heads up EMS Consultants in LaGrange, a company that handles billing for several ambulance companies. Tibbetts says he works hard to ensure they only process claims for patients who truly qualify.
There's a lot of fraud through Medicare. Ambulance is just the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of fraud through there, I'm sure.
There are cheaper ways to get people to dialysis who don't have a ride. If they also qualify for Medicaid, the state and federal health program for the poor, patients can use a van service that takes them from door to door. They share the ride with other patients, but the one-way cost difference for taxpayers is striking.
About $50 versus $250.
That's quite a savings.
Oh yes, 80%.
The ambulance company we watch, Caring Hands EMS, is run by Floyd Keels, seen here on his LinkedIn page. This is his wife, Shala, from her public Facebook page. She's listed as the chief financial officer. According to state corporation records, the two are also listed as officers for this Mableton dialysis clinic. That's where we watch several Caring Hands ambulances bringing in and picking up patients. In fact, we saw no other ambulance providers on the 2 full days we watched. Yet, according to Medicare, there is no rule preventing someone from operating both an ambulance service and a dialysis clinic. When we dropped by Caring Hands' office in Austell, Floyd Keels refused to answer any of our questions and asked me to leave the property.
Thank you, Mr. Keels.
No.
Nice to meet you. So what's the answer? Well, Medicare is trying something different. In some states, ambulance providers must now get prior authorization from Medicare before billing for non-emergency transports. Is it making a difference? Oh, yes.
According to Medicare, under the old rules, when the government paid claims without asking for documentation first, non-emergency ambulance billing averaged nearly $19 million each month. In the first year of the new rules, that number dropped nearly 75% to $5.4 million monthly. And in South Carolina, considered by the government as one of the biggest ambulance dialysis abusers, during that first year, 20 ambulance companies went out of business.
Out of 200 ambulance services in South Carolina, that means that 10% went out of business because they could not carry people that did not go to dialysis.
What does that tell you?
It tells me there's a lot of fraud.
Medicare wants to eventually make prior authorization the rule for all states, but at the moment, Georgia ambulance services operate under the original rules. Taxpayers underwriting those red light limo rides, even some patients admit they don't really need.
Okay, so I think a lot of Georgia taxpayers are going to want to know, when will this prior authorization come to our state?
Medicare has not made a decision yet on that today, at least no announcement. There's been some pushback in some of those other states from patients and ambulance providers who say, wait a minute, these rules are now too tough, and legitimate patients are not being able to take these ambulances to dialysis. And so Medicare may be trying to balance to figure out the right combination here for this particular thing. But you have to wonder, would Medicare have paid for the ambulance trips that we watched if the ambulance service had written down and submitted to Medicare what we saw?
Right.
People walking to the stretcher, people walking up steps. Multiple times we saw this, walking away, not really, well, certainly not stretcher bound, not the kind of person you might expect would have to have Medicare funded ambulance rides to dialysis.
Well,
certainly
an Uber ride or a taxi would have been a whole lot cheaper.
Uber would absolutely be cheaper. You're exactly right.
Yeah, other alternatives out there for sure.
Yep.
Randy, thanks.
All right.